Romania's Foreign Minister Bogdan Aurescu joins me now live with more. Thank you, Minister, for being with us. Is that number correct? About 290,000 Ukrainian refugees have passed through your country?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. I think the number is already higher than that. I think more than 300,000 refugees from Ukrainian citizens, actually, because we are not counting here the citizens of other countries, which also crossed the border in Romania. So more than 300,000 Ukrainian citizens have crossed to Romania, either through the Romanian-Ukrainian border or through the Republic of Moldova. And as we speak, more than 83,000 of them have stayed in Romania. They are staying now in our country. We are now trying to help also our neighbor, the Republic of Moldova, which is a very small country and with a very limited capacity to deal with such a burden. And we are creating, together with them, a green corridor from the Republic of Moldova-Ukraine border to the Romania-Republic of Moldova border in order to help the transfer of a lot of refugees to go directly to Romania. So we are helping everybody who is coming to the Romanian soil. Most of them are mothers and children, and more than 1/3 of those who are staying here are children. There is a huge
what
effort
happens,
of
sorry to jump in, but what
Yes.
happens to them long term? Because kids obviously can't stay idle too long. They might need to go to school. They have to find housing. They need a routine. What's the plan for them? And are you asking for help from other countries, to financial help to try to deal with the influx?
Well, for the time being, we are coping with the crisis, but the numbers will grow certainly, because even if the fights will stop in Ukraine, the country is basically destroyed by the war, and nothing works there, and the numbers will definitely grow. And the estimates of the International Organization for Migration are that another wave of refugees are coming. As far as those who are staying in Romania, we have already taken a lot of domestic measures, and we are preparing for arranging schools for children. We have already provided free medical assistance for all who are staying in Romania. We are trying to facilitate their integration into the job market. So we are trying to do our best to create the best conditions for them, for those who are staying, for them to be safe in Romania and to feel comfortable, if possible,
Sure.
of course.
Let me ask you about this idea of a no-fly zone. You know, President Zelensky is asking NATO countries to enforce a no-fly zone over his country. Some high-level academics and policy experts in the United States are saying that we need a no-fly zone over humanitarian corridors. Of course, there's a reluctance to do this because it could be interpreted by Russia as an act of war and could, in fact, lead to confrontations in the air between NATO fighter jets and Russian jets. Do you support the idea of a no-fly zone?
Well, indeed, we have discussed this matter during the NATO Foreign Ministerial meeting on Friday in Brussels. And I have taken part in that meeting. And as Secretary General of NATO, Mrs. Stoltenberg, stated after the meeting, unfortunately, we cannot enforce such a no-fly zone over Ukraine airspace, because if we do so, that would mean, as you said earlier in a conversation with one of your guests, this would mean that NATO might get into direct conflict with Russia. And since Ukraine is not a member state of NATO, NATO cannot do that, cannot enforce that, unfortunately.
But the problem then is, what people will say is, we're just all helpless watching fighter jets flatten entire apartment blocks, villages that don't seem to have any military value whatsoever, and hundreds, if not thousands, of people dying every single day. So what is the solution?
Well, NATO has already provided a lot of support to Ukraine. There are years and years support for Ukraine, for its defense capacities. Ukraine is an enhanced opportunities partner of NATO for quite some time. So there is a lot of support which is already and was already provided by NATO to Ukraine. Unfortunately, a no-fly zone cannot be enforced by NATO because of the reasons that I have just stated. And
So
I think they are obvious.
what can be done? Because do they need more surface-to-air missiles? Do they need more anti-tank weaponry? Do they need more training? Because the Russian military is 10 times the size of the Ukrainian military.
Yes, indeed. And I think a lot of support has been provided by NATO member states individually, by EU member states. As you remember, the EU already adopted the decision to finance the provision of weapons to Ukraine. And, well, this is happening. But a no-fly zone, again, it's something that NATO cannot provide.
Sure, got it. Okay, thank you very much. Bogdan Aurescu is the Romanian foreign minister for joining us live from Bucharest. We'll be right back.